Welcome to Thinking Too Hard About Anime, an episode-by-episode discussion of a beloved animated series. It's a little bit of history, a little bit of analysis, and a lot of over-examining the Japanese cartoons we love so much. I am your co-host, Noah Carden, and with me is...
Aaron J. Shelton.
Today, we are here to cover Session 3 of Cowboy Bebop, Honky Tonk Women.
The synopsis for this episode... And by the way, the synopsis for this on Wikia, the fandom page for Cowboy Bebop, is very bad. They actually made me have to write one, so here it is. In order to pay off her debts, Faye Valentine is forced into a gangster's casino scheme, but everything goes wrong when Spike accidentally gains possession of a certain poker chip.
So this episode is directed by Kunihiro Mori, and it was written by Ryota Yamaguchi and Keiko Nobumoto. Nobumoto-san is one of the big names in the writing of this series. We get introduced to our new regular character, Faye Valentine, who is voiced in Japanese by Megumi Hayashibara. So here's a couple of her roles. I've only gotten like 4 of them written down. But let me know if some of these sound familiar. Rei Ayanami, Lena Inverse,
What?
Jessie / Musashi in Pokemon, and Paprika from the movie Paprika.
What? She's the titular Paprika?
Yes. So, yes, Megumi Hayashibara, she is prolific.
And this is my first time, since I'm going through the subtitled version on this, this is my first time hearing Faye's Japanese voice actor. And it's a little cooler, feel not temperature-wise, of a delivery, I think.
And then the American voice actress is Wendy Lee. She's also known for playing Angel in The Big O. She played the young TK in Digimon. So like that first series of Digimon. Mm-hmm. And then she was also Kiva in Megas XLR, which I feel is very much borrows a little bit from Faye, just a little bit. But also makes her more of like an action girl kind of character.
Megas XLR is a show, again, I think that happened during when I was on my mission. So I missed out on it and just never got to go back to it.
It's one of the first like shows that I can really remember that wore its anime reverence on its sleeve.
It's weird that used to be a special thing and something to get excited when like, oh, they know all they like all the same things I like and they're showing it, to where it's very saturated and can cause a bit of cynicism when you see too much of it.
Yeah, definitely. So that's the main production side of things. I've got a few Easter eggs about like the name of the space station that we see in this episode and a couple other things, but we'll get to that.
The first thing we got to talk about, because the first thing we see, or the first person we see is Faye Valentine. And whether intentionally or unintentionally, they designed an entire sequence that makes you fall in love with Faye.
Yes.
She's cool. Has a machine gun.
Yeah, she has an MP5 in her groceries.
She smokes a cigar.
She's cool and calm and collected, and she's not afraid to, shoot the first shot.
Her legs are stupidly long. Some might say inhuman.
Yeah. She is clearly cut from the Bayonetta cloth.
But at the same time, throughout the series, she's not just eye candy. She's not just someone who's causing mischief and trouble for the Bebop crew.
She plays the femme fatale in the show, and I think she, as a character, plays a femme fatale, but that's not necessarily who she is entirely.
They showed in this episode, and it's very quick. The boys handcuff her in the toilet. She escapes. And when she escapes, there is just a shot of a mini fridge that has been raided. Like, it looks like raccoons have gone through it. And it wasn't until this watch that I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's Faye. That's her thing. She's just going to eat all your food. but it's a nice subtle like, no, she's a slob.
Yeah.
And also a food thief. Even though it said Spike on that bag, it was clearly labeled.
Who do you think would label their food on the Bebop? Do you think it'd be Spike or do you think it would be Jet? Because my money's on Jet.
Jet's a dad, so I don't think so. I don't think he would actually label it, but he's the most persnickety. Yeah, I guess you're right. It would be Jet.
Because I also see Jet because he was a police at one point. I feel like him being in an office and constantly having to bitch and moan at the other guys in the office and the department about eating his lunch out of the fridge or something.
Also in this opening scene, one, it's a really good shootout. And what it made me think of was how I miss the, for lack of a better term, wetness of gunplay in films, because everything blows up. The shelves get destroyed, jars get open, a jar crashes down, there's a little eel in it. The windows, the doors, it just gets perforated in this beautiful, and I'm sure time-consuming way to animate it. And that's very much the 80s, early 90s action movie influence on there.
Oh, yeah.
And we sort of, I feel like, at least in the States, we've gotten away from that. One, because I think that's a bitch on set. Practical effects are going to fuck up on a film set, whether it's like special makeup, something involving pyrotechnics, something like that. It takes a lot of time to set up. And we're getting away from the random firing of things into the precision mercenary assassin. For example, the John Wick films. There's not a ton of environmental destruction. The third one picked it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But he's very much like one shot head, like he doesn't miss.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And that shows off precision, but I miss there's a certain type of scene with gunplay where everyone fires and it's just chaos. And then at the very end of the scene, when the last person's standing, you get the quiet still and you could just get to look at all the destruction they caused. And it's nice to see it again.
I think the last time I can clearly remember a scene like that happening is the first Matrix movie with the lobby shootout. I think that's like the last time that's very clearly in my mind that an action scene like that has happened, because it's all the shooting and the flipping and all the tiles on the walls and ground and all that exploding and shattering, and then they get in the elevator when it's all done and the elevator's doors close. Then that one set of tiles just kind of falls over as like the little button on the scene.
Within Hollywood, they're actively de-glamorizing guns and gunplay, which is good.
Yeah,
but like I don't want to be old man on the porch saying "get off my lawn" modern action movies, but there's a aesthetic element that has been missing.
Yeah. And I definitely think there's bigger sort of socio-political things that are affecting that without, getting too deep into it. But I definitely think that the sort of portrayal of the elite operator kind of thing and the post 9/11 environment has affected visual representations of gunfights and things like that. So I don't know how we would necessarily get back to that in like live action films, at least American ones. I could maybe see it happening if we look more towards like the Hong Kong action, but even then I'm not 100% sure. But you are correct. There is definitely something about this opening shootout where it's just absolute destruction, jars breaking, boxes exploding, all that great stuff that is very fun to watch, even though like it's just absolute like bonkers that like nobody actually gets hit in that opening scene.
Faye, after she's apprehended after the gunfight, she has to strike a deal with this mobster who I don't believe we ever get a name for.
Gordon is his name.
Gordon, generic bad man.
Yeah, his name is literally just Gordon. I think he gets mentioned like twice, and one of the times is when Faye is tied up in the bathroom, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know any Gordon." It's like, no, dumbass, the Gordon that runs the casino.
See, even his own henchmen, they just call him Sir, or
Yeah,
there he is.
that guy.
Hey, big man. So apparently Faye has gotten the nickname of Poker Alice. And they mentioned this a little bit in the episode, but Poker Alice was a real person. A little info on her. Her name was Alice Ivers Tubbs. She lived from 1851 to 1930. And she got her start playing poker when her first husband, who was a minor, would play. She would just stand back and like watch, but soon she got involved and she took to it. She was very good at poker. And after her first husband's death, that's how she made her living. She made a very good living. She'd travel across the West. Poker halls and saloons would invite her to come play at their establishment because they knew she would bring a crowd in. Then she passed away in 1930. I guess basically why I think she has a place in a subcategory history is one, here is a woman known for playing poker professionally. She claimed that she won $200,000 in winnings in her lifetime. So $200,000 in 1930. That means that over her life in winnings, in today's money, would be about $3.1 million.
Holy shit.
So yeah, she also, just like they say in the show, Poker Alice claimed that she never cheated. So, but no one, who knows the validity of that statement. A little bit of info, but again, the amount of research they did on their end for this show is insane.
Pulling all that just for sort of a subtle reference to Faye's ability
to cheat.
Yes, to cheat is quite interesting.
What an insane pool for kind of a throwaway reference that doesn't come back in the show.
It's really only limited to this one episode. So the space station that they end up on, the gigantic roulette wheel in space.
They're still above Mars.
Yeah, they're above Mars. They're in orbit and everything.
So this will make sense.
The name of the casino, I don't know if it's the entire space station or because I don't know if they actually make this as like a Las Vegas strip in space kind of thing.
I saw some other, like the name Gold Nugget.
Yeah,
was on one of them. So I believe that the station itself is Space Vegas, I guess.
Yeah,
and they're just at one casino.
Yeah, but the casino that Gordon runs is called Spiders from Mars, which is a Ziggy Stardust reference, and it's all over the place.
Is it spiders or spaders?
So the first time you see it, it's spiders, SPAIDER, but everywhere else, like on the cards, on the ashtray. Yeah, you see in a couple other places, it's actually spelled correctly as spiders. But yeah, it's a one big David Bowie reference.
I would probably go into a David Bowie themed casino.
I mean, yeah, I if nothing else than curiosity's sake, I'd love to see what they did there.
I think the normal casino goer might be reticent to go like Spiders of Mars. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Why is this place called that?
And there's a bunch of spiders all over the place.
Yeah.
Like the ashtray that you see Spike regurgitate his cigarette into, it's roulette like wheel colored, but the shape of it is like a classic spider web shape. Like it's just all over the place. In the elevator, I actually really like this scene because it again just kind of enforces the sort of multicultural nature of Cowboy Bebop. But there's a scene where Spike and Jet are on their way down to Spiders from Mars to go gambling. And Jet is just talking about this dream that he had where Charlie Parker apparently started quoting Goethe to him about how only hands can wash hands and Spike is just not having any of it. He's like, what are you talking about? I don't think you should be taking advice from your dream jazz musician.
Again, it's the fortune telling this episode dream interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that little bit of mysticism sticking in there.
And then Spike is like smoking in the elevator, and you get to see Jet point out one of the signs, and the sign that he points to isn't in English. You see the English one right underneath it, but it's like, hey, no smoking. So Spike just swallows his cigarette, which he will then eventually regurgitate into one of the ashtrays, and we get the nice little setup for later in the show where he swallows the poker chip.
I wasn't going to bring this up because honestly, it seemed gross and stupid, but I got interested in sort of the sleight of hand. Spike he's got a sleight of hand.
Mm-hmm.
And this sort of swallowing an object is part of it. So the most famous, he calls himself a professional regurgitator. The most famous one is a person named Stevie Starr. Most recently, he's been making the Blank's Got Talent rounds, where they just put it off in different countries. He's a Scottish performer. His act involves swallowing various items such as coins, light bulbs, balloons, nails, billiard balls, dry sugar, lighter fluid, and goldfish, and then regurgitate them. Some of his tricks involve swallowing a mini Rubik's Cube, moving his stomach around, and then vomiting it up. It's just the object, but it's solved when he spits it back up. The one clip I saw, he had 4 $50. He wrote numbers on them in Sharpie. He swallowed all of them, and then he asked the audience which one they wanted him to bring back up, and which he did. So it's like it's clearly this is stage magic. He's just doing it in like a weird, gross way. I feel like the swallowing of an object and spitting it back up is more tropey, or I'd remember it like I feel like I saw it more. But like this and that are the only things I can think of, except like you got to swallow this handcuff key so we can get it later.
Yeah, there's an episode of CSI. One of they arrest the murderer at the end of the episode, and then like the stinger, like right before it cuts the credits, is him like puking up a handcuff key.
It kind of feels like quicksand when you're a kid and you think quicksand's just going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
And you just realize, nope, that's just tropey adventure stuff from the 50s that just got infected everything.
Quicksand and crocodiles and moats. So I noticed like one thing, especially in this episode, is you get to see a lot of like security cam footage, but it's also like security cam office, and just like they use a lot of like the sort of light off of the monitors for some of the scenes. And I think that always plays like really interesting because you get a lot of like backlighting so that the characters are in a lot of like really harsh shadow and stuff like that. And like the scene that we get right before the ad break is a lot of backlight from the monitors on the characters as they're about to like execute this guy that looks kind of like Spike that was supposed to have the chip that Gordon is after. And it's just like it makes for a very like kind of sinister mood to the whole scene.
That was surprisingly harsh, that scene. And I think for the reason you said, it's backlit. It's all low angles, so you kind of see everything from the fake cosplaying Spike that they execute. And they're while they're in the casino, between scenes, they're a little montagey. They show a lot of these different snippets of gambling. Kind of more, it seems like more for like moodiness to get you in the feel. Like there's actually one shot where it's clearly not happening in real life within the scene because it's just, dancing playing cards in a wave just to get you I'm not a gambler, but I'm like, this makes gambling look real cool.
Yeah, there's definitely sort of like, hey, here's cards going all over the place, money's being exchanged, the kind of the thrill of betting and all that stuff. Yeah.
So when Spike sits at the table that Faye's dealing at, and she thinks he's the handoff guy, there's like a look of enjoyment, and they're I think they pay it off a little more towards the end of this episode, where we know, or we find out later on, that he knows that she was cheating up and down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Spike doesn't know what's going on. I mean, the plot has to continue, so they have to run into each other. But you would think Spike would be like, immediately get up and leave. But you see him smiling and like staring her down and sort of enjoying the con that's going on.
Yeah. Spike can appreciate a grift, and he can appreciate the sort of skill that goes into it. He's got, Jet says that, like, his eyes are too sharp to be playing in here. So, because he'll just get himself into trouble.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So he's skilled enough to be able to see what Faye is doing. And he's like, oh, all right. I mean, I'm not really in this to actually make any money. That's what Jet's off doing. But, I'll enjoy myself, and this lady is taking me for a ride. Sure, why not?
I mean, you hit it where here's kind of his attitude with money. It's not, I got to make bank as a bounty hunter because I want this, this, and this. It's like, food would be nice sometimes.
Yeah.
And this is something to do.
He doesn't really seem all that thrilled about the money part of bounty hunting. Like, in the first episode, he's not, it's not a big deal to get Asimov because he's not worth all that much. In the next episode, when he goes after Hakeem, he wants mainly money so he can fix up his ship and get some Peking duck. And that's about it. Yeah. Like, he just wants money to get food. Food is the more important thing there.
Yeah, if he could just get paid in food, I'm sure he would be fine with this. Again, until you think about it too hard, some might say, it's this little scene that you can gloss over. They set up for a handoff of the chip to the mobsters not in a spaceship, on a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, this whole sequence is the essence of the show. I guess visually speaking and genre speaking, it's a crime story. There's a handoff. It's sci-fi because they're in spacesuits with little mag boots so they can cling onto ships. Yeah, it's on top of a spaceship. They have to play with 0G. Mm-hmm. It's like this, it's really utilizing all the elements of the setting and what the show is.
Like the handoff portion where he just kind of lets the chip go, and then they get into like the fight scene where like Spike damns a man to float in space for like the rest of his life.
Yeah, he kills a man in very harshly.
Yeah. Like, he kicks him up against the side of the thing, his mag boots go off, and he floats away into space, and, like, that's horrible. But then he manages to catch the chip as it, like, floats across the space shuttle, and then, Faye grabs the cash that they were going to exchange for the chip and makes her escape. They try and stop her, but it doesn't turn out too well.
Yeah, her ship, the Red Tail, it's, again, very distinct from the other ships. Kind of squat and bulbous. There's a scene in the casino where I guess she has Siri on here. She gets to voice activate her ship to come get her.
Yeah, there's one thing I actually really like about that scene is that you see like the ship's computer like check the waveform to make sure that like it's her before it turns on and goes after her.
It's a nice, quick sci-fi touch that's like very plausible. It's a good show of the technology.
Yeah, and I definitely think with the sort of design of her ship, It really shows off like this kind of piece of tech that's kind of universal in the show, which is the monopod. All three of our heroes, like personal ships, Spike, Jets, and Faze, they all have that dome sort of like green glass pod thing. And those are all like somewhat universal. Like they're their own like little ship that gets hooked into like this bigger body that like it just seems like a piece of tech that like personal ships in the Cowboy Bebop universe all use. And then if you have something bigger, it's more of like a traditional spaceship kind of thing.
I did not make that connection until you mentioned it until now.
I think in an upcoming episode, Heavy Metal Queen, we'll actually get to see them like pop one of those monopods out of a ship and use it for its own thing, which is really neat.
Someone thought, hey, if it's a spaceship, there should probably be an escape pod of some sort. There's got to be some redundancy. And they're able to use it in the plot of an episode, which they had to plan out ahead of time, so it made sense for that episode. So when Faye comes in on her ship and she grapples the money, Spike and her look at each other. She says, "Hi, Gonjin."
So she says, in English, she says it Gaujo, which I looked up this term because I was curious myself because I want to know actually how to spell it. And I listened to it in Japanese as well. And it spells it out as Gorgio. So I put it into Google to see how to actually say it. And they say Gorgio, but it is apparently she calls them this earlier in the episode, but Faye claims to be of Romani heritage. And she calls Spike a Gorgio, which isn't what she says it is, because she says it means a person that is like a bumpkin, doesn't know anything. But actually, from my little bit of research, it's actually a Romani term for somebody who is not Romani. It literally means like house dweller. So it is somebody who's not like, a Romani nomadic person. They have a home that they stay in all the time. They don't move around place to place.
I mistakenly wrote down Gonji. So whatever that means, I got it way wrong. Yeah, she says that to Spike. Spike says, "Hi, Romani." And then she blasts off. Again, it's that solidifying of that sort of that mutual respect. There's not a romance between Spike and Faye.
I would say there isn't like an explicit romance there. I think Spike is still very much about Julia to kind of see whatever could be there between him and Faye.
There's an attraction. It's two people who are probably not good for each other.
No.
In most shapes and ways. But they just they have a similar life, or they see certain parts of themselves in each other. It's cool that they're able to set this up and show it with as little like upfront information as possible. It's all between the lines sort of things.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, there's definitely a mutual sort of like respect and understanding between the two. And you get little bits of it here and there. And I think this episode like is very good at kind of establishing it from the start.
I think it's time we go to the circus, right?
Yeah, I hear there's a throwing ring in town.
I hear the calliope.
Oh, Jesus. No, we're not to that episode yet.
Well, I see like a million missiles coming at me. So we're talking about the Itano Circus, or the Macross Missile Massacre. It's a visual element that's across a lot of anime with mechs or other mechanical combat. If you've ever seen a bunch of missiles fired from one thing that then chase down a fighter jet, or that chases down a Veritech fighter or a Gundam, and you see the contrails zipping around past them, that is the Itano Circus.
It's named after Ichiro Itano, who was a director on several episodes of Macross back in the day, and he kind of led that design feature in the show where it's all, like you said, it's all the rockets flying all over the place. They have the contrails. There's some that are going like perfectly straight, some going all over the place. And like the target, whatever these missiles are chasing, is like dancing all over the place in the air. Like it's flying all around, doing all sorts of like acrobatic kind of things, which kind of lends its name, or lends to its name, the Itano Circus, because it's like an acrobat and added during a circus performance.
And we don't, in this episode, we see Faye's ship as the mobster sent a bunch of missiles at her. We get a little bit of it, not the most extreme example there is, but we are like, here it is. Let's mention it. Let's talk about it. The origins come from, there's a scene in Android Kikaider that Itano saw where rockets fire from Kikaider, the motorcycle, in there, and he wanted to duplicate this. So as a student, he put a bunch of fireworks on the front fork of his bike and shot them out in front of him as he drove around. And what he discovered while doing that, this is a quote from him, I think: "The chase was more interesting than the attack when I played this." And so, like, if you can imagine, as you're riding a bike, a bunch of fireworks coming around you. So there, that's sort of where that visual inspiration come from. I don't have examples, but like all of Macross, Gundam, everywhere, so it's no surprise that Cowboy Bebop has this in here, it being from Sunrise. Type in Itano Circus into YouTube and sit back and enjoy. And this animation fills me with just so much glee.
Yeah.
And I think why it's so effective are for a few reasons. One, just the real estate that's on screen, the amount of objects that are moving, while at the same time it's not too much where it's a jumble. You still the action is still very clear. There's the interplay of Z space, especially in the chase portion of the Itano Circus, where the target will move back and forth in front of the away from the camera towards the camera, as well as the missiles, and at the same time the camera is moving in like an opposite direction. J.J. Abrams actually does something similar when people are running that creates a lot of dynamic motion where, well, that's fucking redundant. It creates a lot of motion where characters are running from right to left of screen, and the camera on a dolly is moving left to right while also panning. So with the camera moving in one direction and like the objects moving in the other direction, you get a greater sense of motion. And that's what the Itano Circus does sometimes. It says, there is a camera here, and how are we going to, and here's how we're treating this camera. And then there's just, you get the sense of scope from all the missiles being shot out. So apparently this has like another name. So the shot when a mech or a ship shoots like 20 missiles at once, I guess it's called the NATO missile. I don't know what that's named after, but it's like, it's part of I guess the circus is the chase, but this is also an essential shot in any sort of mech anime. And then you also, because of the contrails and the clarity of everything, it's a cool way to show that whoever is piloting the target of the missiles is really good. So I love the Itano Circus. It's fucking awesome. I am appalled that live action directors, live action filmmakers are not implementing this in their action scenes. in our giant sci-fi and superhero epics, why is there not a shot of Iron Man being chased by 20 missiles as he dips in and out of them?
Yeah, for real. Like, I would love to see exactly that. Just a big, like, missile array that opens up and just unleashes on a thing, and it just, like, dances in between all of them as it makes its way towards, like, the target. Like, it would be amazing to actually see in, like, a live-action version.
Supposedly Top Gun, there's might be influence from Macross in the way that some of the aerial photography happened in Top Gun. Disclosure, I've never seen Top Gun.
Really?
No, I don't. I think it came on like in the afternoons on Saturdays, and I guess I just saw the like love story parts, so I was not interested as a kid.
Yeah, there's some good like flying around in that, but it's like a real kind of like 50-50 fly-in to not fly-in action.
And I don't know, man, maybe this just comes down to our discussion at the top of this episode, where we're losing the particle effect. We're losing particle effects.
Yeah,
in our action movies.
Yeah, I guess you don't want to try and put too much of that in there unless you really, really have to, because that's just going to be a lot of work for not what a lot of people would probably perceive as not a lot of payoff.
In live action filmmaking, for this is definitely a CG extravaganza. That's an entirely different department that you're adding on to. That's a lot more people to get that done versus an animation where it's just, well, it's kind of the same people. They're just working longer on it.
Mm-hmm.
So budgetarily, maybe, but it's also you have to plan this out. It's something that has to be designed in, and that can be difficult, especially on larger budget films. Not that people aren't putting a lot of forethought into things. That has to have. I feel like those kind of shots have to have so much. There has to be such a clarity of vision, and then the execution of that.
So I have a guess as to what it means by NATO missile.
Yeah.
So are you aware of the food called natto?
You're right, but please continue.
So natto is a fermented soybean. It's usually a bunch of fermented soybeans, and it is very much an acquired taste. But it's one of those things that you can get. It's a Japanese food, and it's very divisive among people that like it and don't like it. But the thing about it is that because they kind of ferment, they get really sticky and oozy. So that if you were to pick up a bunch of natto out of a pile of it, there'll be like strands of just like fermented gunk kind of coming off of it. So my head is making the connection of the missile is the actual like natto soybean, and then the contrail, the white smoke coming out of the missile would be like the strand.
Yeah, I can see that, especially on some of the older animations for it, where if it's very much in the distance, it's just these thin white strands.
That's kind of where my mind goes, but if anybody else out there knows for sure, be sure to write into us and let us know.
So for the movie recommendation this week, again, one of those, here's an influence for the episode, and here's the one I actually want to talk about for a random reason that I'm going to try and shoehorn in. So I think you could look at this episode, and there are some clear spy and James Bond connections.
Mm-hmm.
The casino setting, the high-tech MacGuffin of the computer chip or computer program within a poker chip. There's a bunch of cool gadgets that Faye has for some reason. Mm-hmm. Her little wrist communicator with her ship, which I don't think we see with any of the other characters.
No, I don't know if she ever uses it again, to be honest with you.
But she has a lipstick communicator. That's how she's able to talk to Gordon in the bathroom. Didn't have to be disguised as a lipstick, but it was. So that, there's some James Bond feels here. I am not a James Bond fan.
Really?
I have seen maybe 4 movies total. Are you as such?
For the most part, I can definitely look at James Bond and tell you that, hey, there's a lot of really problematic stuff in this series. But for the most part, yeah, I would consider myself a fan to a degree. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to talk about any of the James Bond movies.
Okay.
Maybe Casino Royale, which I learned was like the one where it was not from the Eon Productions, which is the company that have made all of the other James Bond films. They're like right disputes, and they just said, "Fuck it, Casino Royale." The original Casino Royale was a take on James Bond. It was a farce, like we talked about last week.
Yeah. I think it was Woody Allen?
Yeah, Woody Allen's in it, Peter Sellers. The trailer's actually kind of fun if you want to check it out, because there's too much James Bond for one person. Because I guess the plot was they're trying to trick Orson Welles in his casino, and they were having a bunch of fake spies pretending to be James Bond. Some men, some women. It looks insane. I don't know if I want to watch it, but the trailer made it look insane. Very, very 60s, very madcap in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
But what I do want to talk about is Hell or High Water from 2016. Have you seen this movie yet?
I have not. It sounds really familiar, though.
I shall get into it. So it's directed by David Mackenzie, who hasn't. That was sort of the biggest thing. He's done a bunch of other independent films that I was not aware of. But it's written by Taylor Sheridan, who was the writer of both Sicario movies.
Okay.
It stars Chris Pine, Ben Foster, and Jeff Bridges. It's about 2 brothers who commit a series of bank heists to save their family's ranch in Texas. Now, you're thinking, Aaron, this has nothing to do with space or femme fatales or anything like that. And you're right. But one, there's a crime going on. So first thing, there is a sequence at a casino where the 2 brothers sort of they kind of play the system at the casino. I guess it happens pretty early on. I'll just say it. So they use the money that they rob from the banks. They use a casino to launder it. It's a quick way to wash the money because they'll buy a bunch of chips. Then they just sit around, talk. Then they turn the chips back in, get their and it's new money. It's washed. Please don't do crimes. Anyone, don't take my word on how to wash illegal funds. Towards the end of the movie, there are some good action sequences, not just like in a car chase, but like some heavy artillery is used, which made me think of the opening sequence for this episode. But really, what makes it so special and different from, say, other like modern westerns is that it is actually this character study between the 2 brothers. Ben Foster from, that Disney show Flash Forward of Iceman fame. No, I'm sorry. Of Angel fame from the 3rd X-Men movie. He's the ex-con crazy brother. And it's such a great performance. And you just think he's just an asshole. But then you realize what he's actually, towards the end, you understand what he's doing. And a lot of the movie are these interactions between these 2 brothers. And then Jeff Bridges is I believe he's a Texas Ranger. And then it's conversations that he has with him and his partner about sort of the way things are changing. And it's this backdrop of like economic depression as well. That's like, even now is still super salient. On Twitter, people were doing their top 10 movies from the decade, and I put mine together. And Hell or High Water like made the list, which I spent like half an hour on it. Probably too long thinking about it. But I dig this movie a lot. And here in the States, it's currently available on Netflix. So like you could watch it now. I definitely even if you don't like Western or crime, you will enjoy this.
I'm definitely gonna have to check this out. Like, I've seen like the cover for it at work a lot, so I'll have to actually sit down and watch it. Also, here's a side note: Ben Foster married to Laura Prepon
Of that 70s show fame?
Uh-huh.
What?
Yeah, I'm looking at his Wikipedia page. Also, I know Ben Foster from the 2007 version of 310 to Yuma.
Ah, yes, he was in that. See, that's a movie that I have not seen. I don't know why I skipped out on it.
Yeah, it's okay. it's aight.
Oh yeah, this is not an I. The danger of these recommendations is also the overselling of some things. I know, and then I think this is the first time in the segment where I've been like, "Oh my god, you have to watch this." The other ones are like, "These are good for certain reasons, and you might enjoy them if," but like, no, this is something everyone can enjoy for the whole family.
Maybe. So since you mentioned it, I have a film recommendation as well.
What?
Yeah. So I'm actually going to recommend the other Casino Royale. I would actually really recommend watching the 2006 Casino Royale. It's effectively the reboot of the James Bond franchise, where they bring Daniel Craig in. It's supposed to be James Bond's first mission as a 00 agent. And it's got a lot of like really great casino scenes. Mads Mikkelsen is the main bad guy throughout the film.
Yeah.
He's so good. And again, this I think this might actually have started it. Mads Mikkelsen has something fucked up about his eyes. Everything that he's in, he always has something going on with his eyes. It's always kind of weird and creepy.
Not the biggest James Bond fan, so I haven't watched it since it came to theaters. It is good of the modern Bond films. I mean, Skyfall's the best of the reboot. I think that's unquestionable at this point.
Mm-hmm. I would. So with the all the Craig films, which are respectively the reboot of the franchise, it's got sort of a Star Trek film thing going on where it's like every other one is good. So like Casino Royale is good, but then Quantum of Solace is just kind of then Skyfall is really good, and then Spectre was bad, and then No Time to Die?
The one with Rami Malek coming out?
Yeah. Yeah, the one's that's totally not gonna be a remake of Dr. No. It's Dr. No. I watched that trailer like 3 times. It's gonna be Dr. No.
The main beef with Spectre is you can't go from Skyfall, this like subtle look at what it means to be an aging agent, to be like in this world of espionage and like how it's the only thing in your life and how you're aging Bond, to wackadoo back to the 70s sort of James Bond antics.
Yeah.
It's like you can't make that swing, I don't think.
Yeah, no, you really can't. And like I really wanted Spectre to be good, and it just Dave Bautista can't save that movie.
Well, they didn't let him talk. That was the problem.
Yeah. He also has so this is a real gun, but it's basically 2 1911s like fused together. It's so dumb, but it's something somebody actually made, and they use it in that film. It's like, why? Why did you do that?
And you're gonna shake Christopher Waltz at me?
Yeah,
in a bad movie, you monsters.
But yes, I would highly recommend the 2006 Casino Royale. It is a very good movie, and the casino, like the actual like poker scenes in the film, are great. So that has been session number 3. Thank you all very, very much for listening. You can email us at thinkingtoohardpod@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter. That's at thinkinganime. We would ask you all to please go onto whatever service that you are using and rate and review us if you have that option, and to share this show around. If you know anybody that's really into Cowboy Bebop or just anime in general, say, hey, give them a listen. Tell us what you think. We'd really appreciate it. We'll be back in 2 weeks for session number 4, Gateway Shuffle. But until then, I'm Noah.
And I'm Aaron.
And we've been thinking too hard.